What's going on, everybody? It's the Bulls Show, aka Aiden, and welcome back to another video. Ladies and gentlemen, as the All-Star break, I guess, begins and we see the Rising Stars game and all the skills challenges and whatnot, I'm going to keep things based, I guess, in the Chicago Bulls area. I want to continue to talk about the Chicago Bulls and just begin to ask some questions that I feel like do need to be asked in relation to the entire franchise in general. Now, you might be thinking, okay, he's going to be talking about the coach. I'm not talking about the coach in this video. You might be thinking I'm going to talk about the front office. I'm not going to be talking about the front office in this video. I'm not even going to be talking about the players in this video. Today I want to talk about the ownership of the Chicago Bulls, the Reinsdorfs, and I guess that era of the Chicago Bulls and how it has been a very big disappointment for the most part since they have been, I guess, at the helm of the Chicago Bulls. And a lot of people, again, a lot of people have already mentioned this, a lot of people are already aware of this, but I've not made a video about the owners of the Chicago Bulls since I've made this channel for three and a bit years now. I've not really made a single video talking about them, so I feel like this is the time to do so, and again, we'll just see what ends up happening out of this video. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Bulls Show. Turn notifications on and let me know in the comments below your thoughts about the Chicago Bulls and I guess your thoughts and opinions on where our future will be with the Reinsdorfs in charge of the Chicago Bulls, the owners of the Chicago Bulls, and everything in between. Now, I think there's a big reason why I haven't made this video about the Reinsdorfs yet. And that's because I don't know much about them. I really don't. I barely even know what they look like. Again, I'm from Australia. I'm not from the Chicago area. I know they own a lot of other I guess at least one other sporting team in Chicago. I can't for the life of me remember what it is. So again, I know that Chicago fans know exactly who the Reinsdorfs are, and it would be foolish of me to talk about an ownership of the Chicago Bulls and the ownership of multiple sports teams within Chicago if I know little to nothing about it. Well, I guess I'm foolish then, ladies and gentlemen, because I want to start and talk a little bit about it because it reminds me a lot of some other teams that I do support in terms of other sports, and I feel like at the end of the day we're kind of seeing very similar traits between the two, or between multiple teams actually. So let me just start by saying this. From my understanding of the Reinsdorf era, knowing that they've only went into the luxury tax once in the entire luxury tax era, knowing that they are known for being cheap and all they want to do is generate money, and they're very clueless in terms of their decision making within the Chicago Bulls. These are all the things I've heard from Bulls fans around the world, including Chicago as well. These are all this is the thing that they're known for. This is basically their reputation for Bulls fans, essentially. That's what we see. That's what we are aware of when it comes to them. So again, by just seeing these things, knowing that reputation, it does remind me of a couple of other owners of sports teams. And let me just tell you this, just because you own a sports team does not mean you have any clue, idea, or anything really to do like of the care factor of your sports team. I know a bunch of, I don't necessarily know them personally, but I know of a bunch of individuals that own sports teams that could not care less about the success of the sports team in general. Some of them are in the NBA, some of them are outside in other sports, but whatever the case may be, they're more focused on the revenue that comes into the team, the market that they have compared to the competition and the sports factor in general. A lot of people are very focused on the marketing and the business side rather than the sports side, and that's why that's why most fans get upset with it, because I guess our minds are wired as fans. As someone that does a business course, I have a small insight. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm the best at studying business, but that's what I study. So I have a small insight on the business mind. But as sports fans, sporting clubs are the hardest things to identify in businesses, in my opinion, because the fans want us to succeed, but the owners doesn't necessarily need to see us succeed in order to get the money that they require, to get the revenue streams that they need to, I guess, make a profit every single season by the Chicago Bulls. It's really as simple as that. So you see the Bulls' large market, you see the worldwide fans that they have. Maybe they're not the biggest fan base in the entire world, but in my opinion they're the most loyal fan base in the entire world, and they're definitely up there as some of the biggest as well. Again, I'm from Australia. I've seen people from Spain, from India, obviously from America, from England, South Africa. There have been so many people that have come to this channel alone and express where they are from. I'd like to know if you're from an international fan base. Let me know where you're from in terms of the country. I'd love to know, because again, worldwide fan base. So they've got all of that on their side. Large market, a very high attendance rate, Always top 5 in attendance in the NBA. Never, ever, ever have I seen the Bulls be one of the lowest, I guess, attendance teams in the NBA. I've never, ever seen it. And all these things. So they've got what they need to make high revenue or to make a profit out of the Chicago Bulls every single season with little to no backlash in between. And that's where things kind of get a little bit difficult, because I've seen a lot recently saying that the Bulls and the fans should try to get the Reinsdorfs out of Chicago, or out of the Chicago Bulls at least. And that has to be, I guess, plans in place to make sure that that can happen. And this is where I'm going to link to other sports. If you don't know, I have a second channel called Man United Culture. If you're not a Man United fan, do not bother checking it out. I do not want people to just join in for the sake of, I guess, the fact that I run the channel. I'd much rather have Man United fans out there that obviously would want to see the videos. But and nonetheless, it doesn't really matter what the channel's called. It doesn't really matter if I even have a second channel in general. Basically, from the Man United's perspective, it's a very, very similar process. We are run by the Glazers, who I believe own an American football team, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of you might be aware of who they are. And at the end of the day, from Man United's perspective, they have been the worst owners I've ever seen in 17 years. I think they're personally worse than the Reinsdorfs, and that's saying something. But at the end of the day, that's how I feel. And at the end of the day, they're on the verge of selling Manchester United. And I'm not necessarily sure what the reason is behind it. Maybe because they've just run out of the money that they need to keep it going, or whatever the case may be. But there have been a lot of things that have been done by a Man United fan to make sure that the Glazers are no longer in charge of Manchester United in the future. At least hopefully that's what the outcome will be. Now, I'm not saying by any means Chicago Bulls fans should do this, but there were a lot of stuff that ended up taking place that brought to the attention that the fans didn't want the Glazers in charge of Man United anymore. Things like protesting. I think protesting is perfectly normal. Again, we protest for the, I guess, Gar-Pax era to be removed from Chicago. We didn't want to see them, I guess, as the front office anymore. We made protests about that. There was billboards made about that and everything in between. Spreading the awareness. Obviously, national TV and Zach Levine and how the fans were cheering for the Gar-Pax era to just go. We don't need it anymore. That's one thing. Again, spreading awareness of the situation. You could definitely do that, and it's perfectly legal to do that as well, to protest. At least if, obviously, you've got to follow the rules within your own country, but protesting I don't think is a crime in Chicago. So that's one thing. Obviously, more on the illegal side, and again, I would never, ever, ever, by no means am I saying do not ever do this again, just for the sake of you could be criminally charged for this. But things that Man United used to do, or the fans used to do, is make games get cancelled. They would go onto the court. They would go onto the field, and they would occupy the field. They would sometimes block opponents from entering the arena and things like that. That's how serious it got at Manchester United's level. Now, again, I think there has to be different ways to do it for sure in Chicago. I'm not promoting any illegal action here, but it has to be a consistent, in my opinion, level of attack in terms of the Reinsdorfs. It has to be consistent protest. It has to be nationally televised, I guess, media awareness. You have to spread awareness. That's the number one thing that Bulls fans can do. But I'll tell you this as well. It's going to be extremely unlikely, whether we spread the awareness of the situation or whether we don't, that the Reinsdorfs will leave the Chicago Bulls or will, I guess, sell the team to anybody else. It's as simple as that. We just don't know what they plan to do, and they could be here for another 10, 15, 20 years if they wish. That's really what we have to look forward to as Bulls fans. Because as much awareness as we spread, we have no control and no power over that situation. But that's the best that I guess Bulls fans can do. Spread awareness. But at the end of the day, a lot of people I don't think are ready to do that yet, in my opinion. It took 17 years of the Glazers to, I guess, understand that we didn't want them at the club. It took that long. For the Chicago Bulls, we won 6 straight championships, I guess, in the 90s. And now we're going into the 2000s, and yes, we're still mediocre. We're still really, really bad as a team half the time. But I just don't think Bulls fans are ready to commit to that pressure, committing to constant protests, committing to constant media awareness. Billboards, in my opinion, is not enough. You have to make sure it's worldwide attention, so you can get the worldwide fans to come and support your I guess, I guess your campaign and stuff like that. It's really as simple as that, in my opinion, and that's the best that Bulls fans can do without obviously doing anything illegal. That's the best you could do. Spread awareness that you don't want the Reinsdorfs in Chicago anymore. Make sure that that news gets to them, and then we'll see what ends up happening. But again, extremely unlikely. It has to be a constant protest. It can't just be until the Bulls start winning again and then it's done. It can't just be until the Bulls make the playoffs again and then no one's going to talk about it anymore. It has to be constant, whether we win a championship or whether we're the first pick in the NBA draft. That's when the barrage has to continue. It has to be constant. And that's when I think the biggest difference can be made. But ultimately, it's still easier said than done. And no matter what we do, it's still extremely unlikely. But anyway, I guess that's where this video has turned to. It turns to the Reinsdorfs and that era of the Chicago Bulls. Of course, I think most people, if you ask most people, would you like to see the Reinsdorfs out of Chicago, out of, I guess, whatever team they support outside of the Bulls and the Bulls as well? I think 99 out of 100 people would say yes, that's exactly what we want. We can't win anything with this ownership. We can't win anything with cheap owners that only really care about profits. So again, these are just some of the things you can do. Of course, there are other things like, again, maybe lowering the attendance record for the Chicago Bulls, making sure we are one of the worst attendance rates in the NBA. But that's very hard to do because the Chicago Bulls, the United Center, is a tourist attraction. You're not going to get everybody to stop going to games. As soon as one person drops out, someone else will take their place. So that's easier said than done. You're not going to get people out of the United Center, in my opinion. But maybe, again, not purchasing Chicago Bulls products, stuff like that. Again, I've got a Bulls shirt which I purchased from the Chicago Bulls store, if I'm not mistaken. So that's easier said than done. So again, there are a lot of things you can do, but it has to be constant. That's the key here. It has to be constant. And I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you you should do this or you shouldn't do this, you should do this and you shouldn't do this. I'm not going to tell you anything like that because I just don't know if Bulls fans are really ready to hear it. So again, that's where I'm going to end this video here. We'll wait and see what ends up happening, but I want to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new. Again, I'll see you in the next Chicago Bulls video. Probably not going to be as bad as this one, in my opinion, in terms of, look, we're talking about the owners of the Bulls here. And I don't want to make constant videos about how bad our ownership is because a lot of people know more than me already. So I don't need to express what I think about the situation because I think it's very well known. So that's where I'm going to end it. Again, have a wonderful and safe day to all the Bulls fans out there. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay tuned for more. Take care.